Through the hot red tides of sin.
This is
Faith.
Blind.
Counsel.
Everything is within.
You create the light. We are one.
That's it.
Are we talking about the Encenomancy?
Yeah, we probably. Do you want to just go off the top with that, or do you want to just save that for when we're talking about methods of divination later?
Yeah,
I think we should probably start with Biodome.
It doesn't work though.
No,
It's not the same as Encenomancy, which is a whole method of divination we're going to get into on today's episode. I don't know why I said today as if we do daily episodes.
No, we don't.
Of the Faith Blind Council podcast, where we all have our own microphones this time.
Hell yeah.
It is amazing.
And boom stands.
Just like in Biodome.
And just as thank you guys so much, all the feedback and the support that people have been showing. It's super awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We love you all very much. We want to let's start off before we even get into it. Let's start off with the criticism we got.
We got criticism
About my definition of Tantra, which is totally founded because I don't know shit about Tantra.
Here we go,
Yeah.
listeners.
I don't even remember what I said. I was pretty hammered.
I
think I was something to the effect. I said something to the effect of Tantra is just doing shit for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, that was it.
And I guess I should have prefaced that. And I thought I did, but I probably didn't.
Preface this with the fact that I don't know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I don't know shit about Tantra. I've never really done. The closest I've done to Tantra is just jacking off while I'm on meth for fucking 80 years.
Yeah. And see, it was interesting the fact it's just for the sake of doing it. No, it's cool. No, you're clinging to the fact that there's no real definition for Tantra, so yeah, that's what it is.
What I should have said is it seems to me.
Yeah, that's pretty much all of our definitions, though. It's just...
So for Mike from Doins, we are sorry about that. We'll try better for you.
Right.
Did you just say Mike from Doings?
Yeah, I meant to say the actual city name.
So from Mike out there smoking big doinks in Amish.
Go fuck yourself.
All right, let's get into it. This is episode 2, and on this month's episode, we're going to be diving into Liber MMM and talking about a lot of the stuff that's in there, as well as some really practical applications of diving in and actually doing some fucking chaos magic.
But before we do that, and with the whole concept of just diving right in, we need to check in with Dylan. So, for the last month, you've had the opportunity to work with Sigils and Banishing.
Mm-hmm. It came along pretty well. The Banishing was easier for me personally to get into. The creations of Sigils, I didn't necessarily have a problem with it, just coming up with them and actually finding applicable use for them as well.
Applicable?
Applicable.
We're not even really drinking yet.
No.
I know.
It's
You
just-
guys aren't.
How do you mean, finding an applicable use?
I've been working on a sigil to help me sleep at night.
Okay.
I've been reworking it. I don't know, I keep trying to apply it to what I want it to do, help me sleep. I put my power into it, work with it, and it's just I'm not doing it right, I'm going to do this, change it up a bit, try and rework it, and then I just get caught on this one. Instead of completing Dreadnought's challenge of making a new sigil every day, I got caught up on making several sigils and just trying to perfect them. The Banishing, though, that has just become, out of habit, a normal part of my day. I've actually got it down to something I personally do instead of EAO. I just do a small little, deep breath in, snap, deep breath out. To focus, that snap is all the things that I'm banishing out.
That works. And we're going to get into later in this episode the creation of a personal banishing ritual.
Okay.
So that's actually really good. Now, when you talk about having problems with your sigil, where do you think the problem lies?
Me overthinking into it, honestly. I think I'm just putting too much effort into something that doesn't require that much effort. I'm trying to make this perfect when it's already perfect, and it could be used. I'm just seeing it as I could be expanding on this, but don't really have a reason to do so. Just keep doing it and repeating the process of repeating it.
Do you think also with the using the sigil as a method to get to sleep that there's some urgency behind that would lead to a lust for result?
Yes, actually, since you've been a good way of putting it. is one of the reasons I kept reworking it was, well, this didn't work, so I have to try again because I have to get it. I'll know when it's right.
So one thing with sigils that you'll see a lot of times, especially with people that are just starting out, people have this thing of like, can I fire more than one sigil at once? Yes, and you should. Because the more sigils that you have working actively that you're using, especially like on a daily, basis, you will start to kind of forget what they are and what they're for consciously. And in so doing, you will eliminate the lust for result because you don't really consciously remember what they're for, and that will allow them to do their work.
Right,
I think
you can even do it so that you have several sigils all at once that you charge. Kind of like, using sort of a shotgun method. If you fire all of them, one of them's going to stick. One will hit.
You just kind of, you just set them all up, batch out your sigils, and go. And I think another thing that might be going on is it sounds like you are letting perfect be the enemy of good. I want this sigil to be perfect. I want this to do this and that. And if it's not working, then that must be the problem. When realistically, if it's good enough, it's good enough. If it looks, you just kind of draw some squiggles that look vaguely magical.
Again,
right?
And this goes back to how with magic you're bending probability in your favor. And so you can't think of your success as a black and white thing. A lot of the time you'll have to look at it from a probability standpoint, where you do a sigil and it's like, okay, well, this was 65% effective. How can I make it 73% effective next time?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be 100 every single time.
And a lot of times, talking about kind of like that grading scale of how, different forms that magic takes, sigils, egregores, ritual, blah, 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 blah. Sigils are kind of like a dumb missile that you just fire off, and it's going to go do something. So it might have a result or produce a result, but it's not the result that you were thinking.
Okay, yeah, I can understand that. So do some more work now that I have a better grasp of that. The sleeping sigil is the one I'm really working on. I want to get that one down before I start moving on to other ones.
See, and that could be your downfall, because saying that you have to get it down, that's going to lead to a lust for result. You're going to focus all of your intent on that, which you're just going to sabotage yourself.
And one thing I would suggest, and again, it's going to come up later in the episode today when we talk about ritual craft, is maybe rather than working on a sigil with that, you could create a sleep time ritual.
Yeah, that'd probably be
that's just
better. That might actually be better.
Not necessarily better, but different. It's a different way of going at something.
Yeah, instead of having a ritual instead of working on a sigil, have a ritual for trying to get to sleep.
Yeah.
Right, and if you're having troubles with it in that aspect, start doing research on sleep, like ways that other people find useful that helps them get to sleep, and incorporate that into your ritual, so that way your nightly ritual for this is going to put me to sleep, you make, say, like chamomile tea, and you do that an hour before you go to bed. Like, all of these different steps is going to make it that much more effective.
Okay, yeah, I see where you guys are coming from now.
And that, again, with magic being about intent, a lot of things that go into the practical part of a ritual are mundane. Like, there's this weird... When I was first starting out, there was this line of demarcation that I had where this is magic and this is mundane, and they're two separate things. Then the reality is they're not. Like, mundane things can be magical. Magical things often are mundane. So...
Right, and we had talked about that in the last episode, where every act of will is a form of magic. So everything you do, and especially getting into that mindset, that magical mindset of everything I'm doing to change my reality is an act of magic, it really blends that line between reality and magic.
Absolutely.
All right, that being said, it's good that you're making progress. Keep doing it.
It feels very slow at first. It's just like anything else. It comes with practice, and the more practice you do, the faster you'll start progressing, and
you'll start seeing more results.
Honestly, the most exciting part of that, of the two challenges you guys gave me, was when I developed my own little banishing thing, I thought I was so fucking cool, man. I got this one thing that's just mine, and I felt like I was a fucking badass at this thing that I am trying to my best to learn about. I did one thing right, let's make it two.
Yeah, it's just the more that you go. And the more you'll find out that, like, it's as much, and this is going to be like some cornball bullshit, but it is as much about the journey as it is the destination. Mm-hmm. Like, it's about learning what works. It's about learning what doesn't work and why it doesn't work and how you can fix it. Iteration is like one of the most important things when it comes to building a practice and like really getting your bag together as a magician. Anyways, so let's get into the meat of this episode. We're going to talk about Liber MMM, which is I would say probably the like core of chaos magic.
Yeah.
As far as like basic practices, tenets, etc.
It's a good fucking starting point.
It really is. And I would make the argument that to practice chaos magic in its most basic form, it's the only thing you need to read. Like, it's just like anything else. If you get the free version of some shitty software somewhere, you're not going to be able to do nearly as much. Like I can't do nearly as much with Audacity as I could with, like, you know, Adobe Super Tools or whatever the fuck. Pro Tools. There we go. That's the name of it. I'm smart. Next. I'm good at this. But I can't do nearly as much. But I can do everything I need to do. With that, I think that Liber MMM is a really good point to start. It's only about 5 pages long.
It's 14.
Well, 5, 14. What's the difference between everything and nothing is nothing. So,
yep. And Liber MMM is a small part of a larger book called Liber Null and Psychonaut, which was written by Peter J. Carroll. Liber MMM is the first part of the book. It's the very, very basic practices and tenets and what you need to do to get into actually doing magic.
Exactly. And with that, the first very basic tenet is meditation. Most people, I think, would agree that meditation is the foundation of Western esotericism.
Yes.
Or really, in general, esotericism.
Yes, absolutely. Meditation is the largest building block. It is the foundation of occultism.
Absolutely. Anywhere you go, any different practice that you take up, it has a form of meditation in it. They might not call it that, but that's what it is. Look at, even like mystic Christianity or Christianity in general has like silent prayer.
Yeah, and
which is
meditation on the scripture.
Yeah, that's what that is. Meditation itself is not an inherently magical practice. It's just meditation. I think pretty much everybody is familiar with what meditation is, but maybe not necessarily how to go about starting.
Right. I mean, most people, I think, most people, when they hear the word meditation, they think you're just sitting in lotus position with your legs crossed, just eyes closed, and breathing deeply or saying, "Oh, yeah." Most people hear meditation. That's the first thing they think.
Well, that's the first thing I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be. It absolutely can be, because it's the first part of Liber MMM is with the meditation. It's the entire concept of mind control, controlling your own mind.
Yeah, not like Jeffrey Dahmer mind control.
No, not injecting shit into people's brains and, yeah. It's
control over one's own mind.
Yes, because ultimately your mind is how you perceive the universe. If you can't control how you perceive the universe, how can you alter the universe?
And furthermore, if you can't control how you perceive yourself, how can you alter yourself?
Exactly. And so with that mind control, the first step that you'll need to take is motionlessness. Being able to shut off your body, stop twitching, stop moving, stop trying to scratch that itch. Just being able to exert your will to a point where you can just sit there. And that's where that standard concept of meditation comes in, just sitting there with your legs crossed, doing whatever. That person doesn't move in your mind, do they?
Yeah.
No, never ever.
I would also add that a great way to control scratching that itch, take a shower every now and again.
It
It's
helps.
good. Keeps you from itching so much.
Tips from Dreadnought.
Yeah. Take a shower.
shower.
It's a magical act.
Mm-hmm.
It's transformative. And it's good for you.
Yes.
But yes, motionlessness is very core because it's of the three things that you're working on getting a grip on with starting meditation, that's the easiest. And it's not that easy to begin with.
No, it's not, because you're going to start noticing things that you didn't notice before, like why is my tongue in a weird position? Or should I unclench my jaw? Oh god damn it. Oh, are my shoulders at the shit.
I've been blinking a lot.
Yeah.
Things like that. You'll also notice that what you thought was a comfortable position
Oh, that wears
is
away
not
fast.
comfortable at all. That like lotus position, ugh.
No. Any comfortable position burns away really quickly unless you're in death pose and you're just laying there.
Yeah, and then you fall asleep. And
Yeah.
it's, you're not really accomplishing the meditation you're going after, but it is very relaxing.
Oh, no, absolutely.
And
Which
you're
might help you with your sleeping.
Tips from Yara. You should sleep better.
yeah. Just do it. Finish drawing the horse. And that's where you're at. But yeah, it's very time consuming, it'll feel like. You're going to sit there for the first time you try, and you're like, I'm killing it. I've been doing this a half hour. And then you look, at the clock, and it's been 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's fucking wild.
There's an extreme time dilation because you think you've mastered it, and the next thing you know, you haven't mastered shit.
Yeah. Getting to 15 minutes of being able to sit still is fucking that's one of the toughest things.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things with you starting off doing this, don't expect to be able to do that. Don't be distraught if you do look at your clock and only 3 minutes have passed. Holy shit, this is the first time doing it. You just got 3 minutes. Good job.
And it's another one of those things where it's about progress. It's not about being a master.
Yeah, not about the results, just learning how to do so.
Yeah. And it's about what you're learning as you're doing it. And learning that I don't know my body nearly as well as I thought I did.
I thought all it wanted was pizza and beer.
I didn't know I had 7 testicles. And then I started meditating. And then I found them.
Insight meditation.
Yep. Everything is testicles. That should be the name of my first book. Everything is testicles.
Yes.
So motionlessness is going to lead way into breath control.
Yep.
Breath control is kind of really the core of what meditation is about at the beginning, because you're sitting there, and the whole reason to really work on breath control, in my estimation at least, is because it gives you something to focus on.
Yes. Yep.
Like while you're meditating, you're just sitting there, you're focusing on your breathing.
No, absolutely. And that's extremely important, being able to focus your mind on one thing, which goes back to that gnosis that we had talked about in the last episode, where you want to bring your mind to a singularity. You want to bring your mind to a focal point, and breathing and being able to control your breath. And don't hyperventilate, don't try and keep it as regular as possible, and just focus on your breathing. And there are other things you can focus on, and depending on how you want to do your meditation, but breath is one of the most pivotal ones.
It's also one of the most central, and it's the easiest one to start out with.
Right, because when you breathe, it fills your whole body. When you take it, when you're sitting there and focusing on your breath, you feel it in your entire body.
Yeah, you'll feel your entire body expand and contract and expand and contract.
Which is opposed to like focusing on your left kneecap, there's going to be an entirely different sensation. It's going to be harder to focus on that.
True. So the way that I started out doing it, which was before I even really realized it was meditation, was when I was in basic training and you did deep breathing exercises to help you sleep. But it's the same, literally.
Hey, buddy, here's another hint.
Literally the same thing. As you're sitting there in your, in your lotus position or whatever position is comfortable, just something that's comfortable for you. It's just in for a 6 count, hold for a 6 count, out for a 6 count.
And if you pass out, that's almost sleep.
Yeah.
Counted as sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough.
Yeah.
Get a little power nap in there.
That's great.
Done. Easy. Next song. And it'll be surprising, like, how long a 6 count is as you start doing that. But the goal is, in that 6 count in, you want to completely fill your lung capacity. Then you hold for 6, and in the next 6 count, you want to completely deplete your lung capacity. And you just in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, and you'll develop a rhythm.
Yeah, I was actually about to bring that up. Sounds like the motionlessness has a somewhat rhythm to it when you're trying to breath control as well.
No, absolutely, there is a rhythm, and that's why with your archetype of the person meditating and just saying Om, there is a rhythm to it. They'll breathe in, Om, Om. It's the same rhythm. They're practicing that breath control as well.
And that gets into concentration, like sound concentration, object concentration, visualization concentration, which we'll get to in a minute. So all of this that we're working on so far, you're getting your motionlessness, your breath control, to get to the crux of the magical purpose of meditation.
Not thinking.
Which isn't not thinking.
Shut your brain off.
Yeah, as one phrase, not thinking. Like, the idea is to not think about anything.
And that's a bitch.
That's
hit.
I've been doing this for 6 years, still can't reliably hit that.
No, it's hard. You're going to have peaks of thought where you're sitting there and focusing on your breath and everything's going fine and you're not focused on anything but your breath. And then all of a sudden you think, oh shit, did I remember to turn off my stove? Oh, yes, of course I did. Duh, that's stupid. Why would I think that? Okay, why am I thinking now? Shit, I'm talking in my head. No, shit, fuck. Okay, meditation ruined now. How long was that? 30 seconds? Fuck!
Yeah. And one of the hardest things to do is to get back on track, especially starting out. Once that happens, because then you're still in the destination mode. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, I fucked up. I got to start over. And so you'll just either start over right then and there, and then you start focusing on like, well, I got to reset my clock because I put a timer on this to see how long I can go. So I got to start that all over. And it's just, you're fucked at that point. And then you'll be like, well, fuck it. I'll just try again tomorrow. And then you get into weeks of like, I didn't even sit down to fucking do it because I keep fucking it up. It's
extremely discouraging. And one thing that starting with magic you're going to want to do is have realistic goals. This goes with meditation. This goes with sigil creation. This goes with everything. You want realistic goals because with the whole concept of believing is your tool, if you constantly discourage yourself, you're not going to believe it. So you want to create realistic goals. So when you start creating your first sigil or whatever, you're going to want something easy. So say, I need to find my car keys. They're somewhere in your house. You'll find them. And it's the same with meditation. Don't think, well, I have to go this long without thinking. And I don't need to I need to focus on the clock. I need to have these goalposts. No. Let it come naturally.
Yeah. Like, when I started out, my goal was sit still for 5 minutes. That seemed fucking insurmountable when I first started out. And even now, like, when I meditate, it's not like I'm sitting there doing zazen for an hour at a time. My goal when I sit down is I get all my shit together, I do my banishing, I light an incense stick, and the goal is to just meditate until the incense is burned out. And I don't use like big fucking fuck off incense sticks. I use pretty little ones.
Yeah.
And even that is sometimes doesn't happen. But you start to kind of recognize, and this gets into kind of different types of meditation. You've got, your guided meditation, insight meditation, other types that I can't remember right now. But the idea is like you'll learn to recognize what is an errant thought versus what is inspiration.
Right. And when you do have those errant thoughts, don't think, well, it's all fucked. I'm ruined now. Just the best thing that you can do is just let it reach its natural conclusion, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Let it reach its conclusion, then just restart fresh.
Yeah. So when you have a thought while you're doing this and you're focusing on your breath and you're sitting motionless, what if you have the thought saying, well, what's that in my pocket? Is that okay? Just let that go to its natural conclusion, and don't stress over it. Just say, oh, okay, that's right. I didn't take out the change I had in my pocket before I sat down to do this. So that's what it was. Continue.
And learning to recognize those as they pop up. You recognize that you're kind of having this like tangential thought, and then just kind of let it play out, and then let go of it. And you'll come back to center.
And when you have these thoughts coming to their natural end, by letting them reach that conclusion, you're not going to be bombarded with thoughts so much.
Yeah, one obstacle could turn into 100
Right.
immediately, very quickly too.
It'll just slowly peter off, and then you can, oh, okay, well, that was inconsequential.
And that's one of the like big goals, the big capital G goals of meditation starting out is it's about controlling your mind, but it's not about like having this iron grip on your brain. It's about recognizing your thought patterns and recognizing what's going on so that you can identify those errant thoughts and be able to just kind of let them run out or ignore them. And if that's when you're really, really making progress. You can just kind of ignore those thoughts as they pop up.
Right, and it's magic itself is it's not always about result. It very, like Dreadnought had said, it's very much about the journey. And so there is very much an axiom of self-discovery and knowing yourself and insight into yourself, and you slowly start creating that through these practices where you'll learn more about yourself while you do it, and in doing so get better at your craft.
It's almost like creating the like bizarro psychic filter. You're making a mundane filter to be able to just ignore those mundane thoughts that are showing up. And as you're able to do that, then you'll start to recognize which thoughts are inspiration. And you'll be able to follow those and keep a note of those so that as you're going in your practice in general, okay, I had this inspiration while I was meditating. And there's one thing that I kind of like about like Zazen or...
For Dylan and the listener, would you mind explaining what Zazen is?
It's Zen Buddhism meditation. It's insight meditation.
I thought this was like meditation that a superhero named Zazo did.
No. Zazen is the one practice of Zen Buddhism. It's basically the only thing that Zen Buddhists agree on as being a rule.
And we all know they don't agree on a lot of things.
They don't even agree on whether or not enlightenment is real.
So much bloodshed over enlightenment.
Yeah. 6 dudes.
It's
all of them
fucking travesty.
All of them named Victor is the weirdest thing. But it's basically insight meditation. And they don't even agree on how you should do it. There are rules about whether you should sit full lotus, half lotus, whether it matters. Should you use universal mudra? Does it matter what you do with your hands? None of that shit. But it's insight meditation.
Try not to fall asleep while you're doing it.
Or get too bored.
Yeah.
But the way that I practice it is letting those thoughts run out. And if you start questioning things, because the whole thought is that you question everything, right? And as you start asking questions, you just follow that line of questioning as you go. And it'll get absurd and fucking weird. And the longer you go, the whole goal is to reach the question.
And I know this on a lot of forums that I've read and talking to other practitioners. Myself, I have been diagnosed with ADHD, and so meditation is particularly difficult because our mind, or at least for me in particular, my mind is always running. Like, the smallest thing my brain can immediately focus on. So while I'm trying to sit there and focus on my breathing, if I hear a noise, immediately my thought goes to that. Oh shit, what is that? Okay, well, oh, my cat's fucking something up. Well, I should get up and go get it. No, calm down, back to square one, all of this. And there are a lot of people who have that same issue, but again, it does take practice, and this is something that we'll talk further about in the future, but it's doable. It very much is possible with everyone. It just takes work.
Exactly. So moving in from meditation to a couple of other tools that you're going to have from meditation are going to be concentrations. You're going to have, object concentration is the one that people, I would say, are probably most familiar with, or at the very least, it's the one that is the most, I guess, stereotypical, archetypal.
Yeah, archetypal would be a good one. It's the one that comes to mind most, because what we're kind of in a roundabout way discussing is the concept of the trance. Once you can get to that motionlessness and being able to control your breathing and focusing on that and voiding your thought, that's when you hit the trance state. That's when you hit the Gnostic state. And with the object concentration, that's being able to take your focus from the breath and putting it on something else.
Once you've hit that trance state.
Okay, because I was about to ask, object concentration, sitting down, meditating, and then, picturing a ball of white light in your head.
No.
And focusing on that.
That's image concentration. Okay. Object concentration is a physical thing.
Yeah.
So, one of the most common ones that shows up in, Wicca and scrying and whatever is staring at a candle flame. Just a physical object. Yep.
Flame dances around.
Or a crystal ball or whatever. Just a thing. It doesn't have to be a magical thing. It can be a mundane thing. It could be this battery sitting on the table. But the idea is you get into that trance state and then you just concentrate on that thing for as long as you can. And the idea is to be able to grow that because that is basically, that's your gym time for your Gnostic states.
Trying to train your, trying to get into trance through object concentration.
Well,
focusing on the battery to enter trance.
Yeah, the whole point of meditation is to be able to recognize when you are in a Gnostic trance or a magical trance. And once you can recognize that, then you can focus that laser beam. Because we were talking about in the last episode with the idea of gnosis, of being so mad that you red out, or being so scared that you can't think of anything else. The idea for the magician is to recognize that and use it. And that is why you're working with meditation, to get into this Gnostic state and recognize that you're in it. And then it's just, from there on, once you're able to hit that trance, it's just, how long can I keep this going? How long can I utilize this tool that I've unlocked?
And that's why the meditation is at the beginning of Liber Null and Psychonaut. Because out of all of the different Gnostic states that we talked about, whether excitatory, inhibitory, whatever, meditation is the fucking hardest one to get down.
But it is the most reliable. It's the single most reliable tool for entering a Gnostic state.
Yeah. So
once you get it down.
The best tool, but the hardest to wield.
Yeah.
Right, because with performing magic during your daily life, you're not always going to be able to dance until you hit gnosis. You're not always going to be able to fast or perform sleep deprivation or whatever, but you can always focus your mind.
You can always meditate. You can always find time to do that or make time to do that. It doesn't require any tools. It doesn't require any costumes or, pageantry.
Yeah, it requires you sitting down and wanting to do
Just
it.
go
it
to the,
requires you being awake.
go,
Yeah.
not even meditate in a lucid dream, dog.
Yeah, it requires you being conscious.
Yeah. It requires you not being awake, but being woke, one might say. But it's you go out to the break table when you're at work and you can just practice at the break table, just not talking to anybody, just sitting, just thinking until you're not.
I want to tell Jim to fuck off.
Not thinking.
Yeah, just thinking until you're not thinking. Like, it's that easy, right? So object concentration, a physical thing, that's the easiest starting place.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could just be sitting there and you see people do it all the time inadvertently. You're just staring at a coin that you're holding or something while you're, zoning out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, zoning out's a good way to put it. Like, that's kind of what you're doing, is just focusing on something to the point where your entire attention is just brought to that object.
Yeah, nothing else even matters surrounding you. It's
Right,
you and this object.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, the next one that you're going to talk about as far as concentration is sound concentration. And that's where that's where that comes in.
Yeah, actually, I've had some practice with that. Listening to rain videos at night and just using that as laying in bed, silence, rain, focus on the rain.
Excellent. That is a perfect example, yeah.
Yeah, and that's you're focused on nothing but that sound.
Mm-hmm.
You can eyes closed, eyes open, it doesn't really matter. And the idea
just
is,
as long as the sound is prevalent, you can focus on it.
You're focusing on that and that alone. And it doesn't matter what the sound is. In MMM, Carroll talks about, doesn't matter how profane or absurd or foul or whatever the sound is. Once that sound hits, that's all you focus on.
And quick question real quick. What is the MMM Liber MMM? What is the MMM? Or is it just 3 M's to look cool?
Basically that.
Fucking Carroll.
Yeah.
They're all like that. Every book is like that.
Liber MMM, Liber KKK, Liber LLL.
That's and they're not all like that, but there's
Of
like
course.
Lux Nox, Book of Lies, Book of the Law. It's 90% aesthetic.
Yep. Yeah, and all Liber is Latin for book.
Yep.
So it's just when you're pumping out as many books as Crowley, you just number them.
Yeah.
Fair point.
So that's
Or
that's
Carroll
kind of
Said's letters.
Yeah.
that's where it comes from.
Okay.
But with back to the sound concentration, that's we had talked about it last episode what a mantra is, and taking your sigil and making it into a vocalization. That's what that is.
Okay.
Being able to focus on that. And it's prevalent in a lot of religions. With sound concentration and focusing on sound and repetition of a sound, that's where you'll get the rosary, where you just say the same things over and over again.
The Lord's Prayer.
The Lord's Prayer. In Buddhism, you have the mala beads. Just saying the same thing over and over again. It's focusing on that to the point where you lose yourself.
And that is another way of accessing, high magic. Not high magic.
Hi, magic.
Yeah, hi, magic. How you doing? But it's a way of accessing that part of your psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll get into what I would say is the most difficult, even though it doesn't seem like the most difficult, because you close your eyes and you visualize shit all the time, right? Now try and hold one thing that just pops up.
Oh, that's not too hard. I just
Try and hold that. Try and hold on to that for
Your practice,
minutes.
Suck it.
no. You just
He's
apparently
got
not
it.
good at it.
I mean, that's fair.
I just play Biodome in my head all day.
So you got to switch to Encino Man, and then you can do Encinomancy. It's the new divination.
Ugh, whatever. I'm starting my own cult about Biodome. All right.
But yeah, that's what image concentration is being able to close your eyes. Well, and not even close your eyes. Being able to visualize something and focus on that. Like it's easier starting off, closing your eyes and visualizing that and focusing on that with your eyes closed. But then you'll be able to get to a point where you can visualize it with your eyes open and you can superimpose it over whatever image you have in your mind over everything else.
And the easiest thing is simple shapes. Start with those, and work your way up and work your way up. And the idea is at least starting out, and even like going at, for my practice, the goal behind visualization has been to be able to visualize sigils and superimpose those sigils for when I need to utilize them, charge them, banish them, whatever the fuck ever. That's the idea behind it. But it's still the easiest way to start out with. I started out with just a triangle, just visualizing a triangle and superimposing it on a blank wall. And that takes a long time to be able to reliably do. Because you're going to start thinking about weird shit while you're doing it. Well, what color should it be? How big should it be?
Should it be an octagon?
What if it's upside down? What if it's blinking? Shit like that. It's
There's
weird.
A ridiculous amount of variables.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you had already been training on doing, which is stilling your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to just recognize those mundane thoughts and let them run. Like, just let them go. And that's how it all ties together. That's why, again, we said at the top of this segment, meditation in and of itself is not a magical practice, but it unlocks every magical practice. And that's why it's so important. That's why it's at the top. And that's why we've spent upwards of a half hour just kind of glossing over the stuff that goes into it.
Right. It's the foundation of what you're going to build everything else on. So focus on doing that. Yes, you can do magic without spending days and days doing meditation.
Oh, of course, but meditation helps.
Oh, tremendously. And you can do it without it, but it's going to be harder.
And not only that, meditation is just a good practice.
Oh, no,
Just
absolutely.
chill AF.
It's just a good thing to do because you'll find that you just don't get pissed off that much anymore.
If you're able to, void your mind of thoughts, something bad happens at work, just calm down, let it go. Or like say your brother or someone calls you and gives you some bad news, instead of being an absolute wreck about it, just live now. I'll deal with this. You're able to focus your mind, and instead of letting your brain go to all of these different places, you're able to focus on, okay, well, what should I do in this situation? What can I do now?
Yeah, taking a step back and realizing, instead of freaking out, just take that step back and just, well, how could I treat this situation?
Absolutely, yeah. You're able to, you have more introspection. You're able to see things from a different light. You're able to have more control over your mind, which comes back to the very beginning of what this was, mind control. Being able to control that. Instead of going all over the fucking place, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I should do in this situation. Well, calm down. Stop thinking so
that's step one. Step one is always just calm down.
Calm down.
Calm your tits.
All right. Let's get a quick break in here, and then we can get moving on, because I feel like what we're going into after meditation is kind of a hard gear shift. So it's a good place to put in a real quick break, and then we'll be back. We're going to start talking about some more magical practices and stuff that's in Liber MMM. I don't know why I did that like that. It was kind of stupid, but we're keeping
Liber.
We would like to give a shout out to the Chaos Coven, or Church of Nothing. The Chaos Coven is a Chicago-based chaos magic working group led by Naya Ein and Ninov. They host workshops every third Saturday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Occult Bookstore in Chicago, Illinois. Considered by some to be the oldest spirit shop in the world. Each class is pay as thou wilt, with a $15 suggested donation. You can find the Chaos Coven and the Occult Bookstore on Facebook or occultbookstore.com.
Going back to chugging dick.
That's my favorite thing
Are you
to do.
recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're chugging dicks, everyone.
Back to occultism.
Yeah. Chugging that penis.
We're talking
penis.
magic.
All right. So, I don't know, it's kind of hard to recover from that.
Yeah, sorry, everyone.
No.
Let's
Once
wrap it up, boys. We just hit the ultimate occult truth.
Once you've been to the top of the mountain, it's not fun going up the fucking hills of Kilimanjaro anymore.
Yeah, just understand that as the subtext for Hodorowski's Holy Mountain. It's just chugging dick.
Yeah, that's the whole point of. All right.
Anyway,
I've learned more about magic about you two talking about chugging dick than this entire podcast. But
Yeah,
other
that's.
than
I mean,
that,
it's just hard to make those two words episodic.
dick and chug.
Episode 1, chugging. Find out what we're chugging on the next episode. Episode 2, dick.
Well, wrap it up, boys.
All
We're
right,
done.
we did it.
Our 2-episode podcast.
Yeah, dude, it's a serial. We did it. Okay, so we're moving on from the art, I guess, art and practice of meditation.
Yeah.
Is I guess the best way I can put that. I don't know. There's
It
probably
works.
better ways, but I'm not gonna try.
Fuck it.
And we're going to go into another kind of core tenet of chaos magic specifically, which is the idea of metamorphosis.
Yes.
And this isn't metamorphosis like the show Gargoyles, where they would, go from being stone to being real. And, whatever. This is a more realistic idea of metamorphosis.
More realistic than cartoon gargoyles.
Hey, listen here. All right. That show was amazing.
It was a very formative time.
I learned a lot from that show.
I would not go back and watch it again as an adult,
Didn't age well.
but as a child.
Anyway, okay, so what metamorphosis is it's last episode we had talked about the concept of paradigm shifting and being able to switch between different paradigms. Metamorphosis is on the same level as that, except with yourself. Change your own paradigm.
It's a building block towards being able to shift paradigms. And the idea that you can change anything about yourself. The easiest way to start is to be able to change habits, which are surprisingly easy to change.
Depending.
As you start with something small,
Yeah.
and you start working your way up. But there are certain habits that are surprisingly easy to change. One of the first, acts of metamorphosis I did was changing which pocket I put my wallet in. Instead of putting it in my right pocket, I now just put it in my left pocket.
Yeah. Doing that, changing which hand you brush your teeth with, deciding to put your pants on 2 legs at a time.
Ooh,
Yeah. That's a
that's a big one.
Advanced move.
But I mean, metamorphosis is a magical way of describing something that people do all the time. Change in habit. I change my diet. I quit smoking. I quit drinking. I drink soy milk now instead of regular milk or whatever, right? It's a magical way of viewing those acts and expanding upon that. Because if you're able to change your diet, if you're able to change habits, what else can you change about yourself at will?
The color of my hair.
You could change that.
Grow a beard.
You could decide, I'm going to start painting my nails black every day now.
That's not a bad idea. I might start doing that.
You can do things like that. And then what else can you change? You can change anything. You could, with enough practice and with enough work, you could decide to be left-handed.
Or ambidextrous. Fuck it. Don't limit yourself.
Or use no hands. Don't limit
Cut them
yourself.
off.
Yeah.
Don't
Well, I
even-
mean, that's
Don't do
a
that.
bit extreme.
That's metamorphosis to the extent. Changing yourself.
That's
Make a beautiful
mutilation.
butterfly. Cut
That's-
off your legs. Sprout wings.
That's a terrible idea. Should not do that ever.
I've never been praised for my good ones.
That's true. But you will continue to be admonished for your terrible ones.
Yes.
But you can change your mood. Just decide to be happy. Decide to be sad. Decide to be upset about something.
Goes back to the concept of fake it till you make it.
Yeah. There are times on my old podcasts that I did, years and years ago, where, for the sake of a bit, you just decide to get upset about something that you really don't personally care that much about. But the shtick of the show was just being 2 angry fat dudes. So you just decide, acting upset about something, but you decide to get really upset about it. And, that sells and that plays. So you're doing that,
It's the ability to see yourself as pliable, as not a rigid thing. Your personality is not static. You, just like everything else, is fluid. You can change it. You can do what you want with it.
Exactly. And as it's a learning, it's again about the journey. You're learning what can be changed and what can be manipulated, and you start to learn that anything can be changed and anything can be manipulated, and that unlocks this ability to just paradigm shift.
And you'll think like, okay, well, this was hard to change. Well, why? Why was that hard to change?
Compared to other things which are kind of easy to change. Like, for example, my metamorphosis of thinking about chaos magic. Didn't give two shits about it before I, started decide making this podcast due to. Within 2 weeks, I was just like, this is interesting. I want to do this. Within a month, just like, this is now a habit that I have.
Yeah.
Metamorphosis.
Yes, exactly. You're changing that aspect
the way that
about yourself.
I view everything around me and actually apply it to myself.
Yeah, and the purpose of doing this is to be able to get to that paradigm shift ability of, I believe in God now.
Still working on that.
I worship the goddess of destruction from Hinduism now.
Yep.
I prefer Dionysus.
Exactly, but then like being able to change that.
Just roll a dice. Tomorrow I'm worshiping my left sock.
Yeah.
He's a good one.
Whatever it is that you decide, like, oh, I'm going to be a nihilist today. I'm going to be an existentialist tomorrow. Whatever it is, And the idea, not so much that you can pretend, but that you can actually shift that paradigm.
Yeah,
but it goes back
to make it.
It goes back to you do fake it until you genuinely are able to just shift into that. And it's a tough thing to master. But you don't have to master it to do it.
Right, and I mean, sometimes you can just do it for the fuck of it. Like, it doesn't have to be some huge thing. Just decide, well, this sounds like fun. I'm going to do that now.
Yeah.
I'm going to charge my phone on the other side of my bed.
Or I'm going to pray before my meals now.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You can start doing these little habits, these little things to discover that you can do it. You can just change a thing about yourself. I know that Yara and I are both looking at doing some metamorphosis exercises in the coming month or so that are going to be pretty fun, I guess.
Care to elaborate?
Well, one that I tend to do that takes a lot of will on my behalf is with how bored I can get sometimes and other things. I've been a nail biter for as long as I can remember. And one of my acts of will in changing that is not doing that.
Just stopping it.
Just stopping. Which has taken a lot of will. Just from years of errantly, like, biting your nails or doing whatever, being able to just stopping a habit. I've quit smoking over the last couple months. But coming up, I'll be changing my diet. I'll be doing the whole keto thing with my wife, which I've done that before. I used to weigh almost 300 pounds, and I knocked down 80 in a couple months.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But I just did that.
Yeah.
So that, I changed my situation, I changed my mindset, and so I'm going to do that again.
We have a really cool tool for that, guys. Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis is... And in that vein, talking about dietary metamorphosis, I am going to be spending the next month or so doing the Ed Gein diet.
Jesus.
Of just nothing but pork and beans.
Interesting.
For a month. Just 6 cans of pork and beans a day.
It's a good thing they're only $1.
Oh, not even, dude. There's 79 cents, dude.
Oh shit.
Van Camp's Pork and Beans. We're looking for a sponsor, by the way. 79 cents for a can of pork and beans. 2 of those for a meal.
That price?
And just...
I don't want functional kidneys, so I'm just going to chug pork and beans.
It's fine. It's something like 120 grams of protein a day.
It'll be fine.
Such a terrible... This is the worst idea I think I've had.
Coming back to the chugging we were talking about earlier.
You definitely
it's
won't
not
shit
dick.
yourself.
It's pork and beans.
Episode 3.
But, that's one. And, you decide to change things all the time. I started brushing my teeth with my left hand just to see that I could do it.
Yeah, and that's one thing.
Good.
That's very much one thing. Seeing if you can do it. Do you have the will to do it? Strengthen your own will.
And that's another kind of tenet of magic in general is doing things for the sake of the process. Just
Tantra.
Yeah. It is a core tenet of magic.
Unlike you, Mike.
But the idea that you're doing something for the process of doing it without an intended result.
Yeah.
Just to see if you can do it. Do a ritual just to see that you can do a ritual.
Yeah, I mean, with the creation you had of your banishing ritual, it had no meaning but to you.
It was something very special.
It worked, though, didn't it?
Does great work for me.
Yeah.
I
Do
took
it because you
Banishing
can.
and made it very simple for myself.
Good.
Streamlined that entire process.
And that's pretty much what metamorphosis is.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
exactly
you're
what
changing
happened.
things, you're doing things to see that you can do them.
Instead of me doing the full process of banishing, I just kind of changed it into my little way of doing it.
Well, and metamorphosis is more, I would say, about applying that to yourself.
Yeah.
Changing something about yourself.
Yeah, actual habits.
I decide to shave every day now. I'm going to grow a giant beard. Whatever, right?
Yeah, it's metamorphosis. I decided to not do anything and just be disheveled.
Yeah, it is. You're changing something about yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it
as
might
long
be
as
a
that be
passive
positive.
change.
That's why I'm wearing my give up on life pants.
Dude, I miss my give up on life pants.
Wearing them right now. They're called pants.
They're all the way in my apartment, and they're just, yeah, I miss them so much. Okay, so let's move on from talking about metamorphosis and talk about some more physical, like actual things, I guess, instead of concepts. We're going to start talking about like some magical tools. That's another section in Liber MMM where Carroll describes the tools, like physical tools that a magician should have. And I would argue some points about it, but most of them, I mean, it's a standard, right? So we'll talk about it, and then we can talk about some opinions about magical tools and stuff like that. I think the most, I guess, essential tool, I would say, and we'll get about why it's essential as a tool, is a method of divination, I guess is the best way to put it. Different sets, ways to go about divination, and really just kind of talking about divination in theory and in practice. So I know that Yara does a lot of divination work.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm more proud of, and actually had spent the last several years focusing on is different forms of divination.
And this is where we can talk about Encenomancy.
Yes. Encenomancy, which I had just completely determined fucking chaos magic that, you ask a question to the universe and just randomly pick apart an Encenoman that you have on your computer. Just click somewhere on that fucking scroll bar and...
Implying I don't
Yeah.
have a VHS of it.
Yeah, fucking Pauly Shore will answer your question.
It's answered every one of my questions so far.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's dead ass. This man has done Encenomancy. Like, this is not it's a joke, but not really. Like,
Yeah,
this guy's
done it.
actually done Encenomancy for another person.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, they said they wanted me to do a reading with Encenomancy. They asked a question, I gave them an answer with Brendan Fraser's help.
Which as a bonus for stuff later, we will do some Encenomancy at some point
Yeah.
in the future, either like a live Instagram thing or something. We can do some actual Encenomancy. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be so much. It's gonna be the best. Anyways,
Yep.
let's talk about more basic forms of divination. Usually, when people think of divination, they think of crystal gazing or a pendulum, or more traditionally tarot.
Tarot, throwing
Yeah.
bones,
Yeah, dude, my
Or-
bones are dope.
I Ching. That's another one that's fairly common.
Never heard of it.
It's Chinese divination.
Divination as an idea, and why I would argue it's the most essential physical tool to have, because basically all divination in my mind is intuitive divination. There are volumes and volumes of text written about tarot.
Oh, yeah.
But tarot,
There are books written on single decks.
Yeah. The Thoth deck.
Yep.
The Thoth deck has entire books, plural, written about it.
Mm-hmm.
But realistically, you're intuitive reading.
Yes.
What are the cards saying to you?
Mm-hmm.
And what are they saying to you today, now, in relation to the question that's been asked?
So not in relation to the person who you're giving the reading to?
Can be. I mean, okay, so how I see divination as working, especially when I talk to skeptics, because one of the things that I like doing is going to local bars and giving tarot readings for free beer. To skeptics, what I'll say is I read the cards to create a story. These cards are telling me something, and I just say it. Whether or not it's applicable to your life, it may not be. But based on intuition, based on reading you, based on tapping into the ether, however you want to see it, you're going to find something that's applicable. You'll take my words, be them vague or not, and you'll find something that you can apply to your life, and that will tune in your own intuition and teach you something about what you need to be focusing on.
So it's kind of like a double lens, right? I'm reading the cards. You are interpreting my reading. And that's kind of, that goes back to why I would say having a divination tool, a physical divination tool, is essential, because in my mind, all divination is intuition. All of it.
Oh, yeah. And the more you do it, the better your intuition gets.
Well, not only that, the more you do it, the more you realize you don't need a tool. You can just intuit things, right?
Right.
But you need something to focus that through, especially starting out.
Well, it's not just that. Like, so you can, yes, intuit things, but having something there as a prompt.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you need. I've talked to different, people who do divination, and there are some very, very accurate, just intuition readings that I've gotten from people. But there are also some that are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Right. And it's not that I think the people that are like, the ones I've gotten where it's just off base, it's not that they're full of shit. It's just that it helps so much more if you have something to channel that through. Right. You have a tarot deck, a pendulum, you have stones, you have, whatever.
There are countless ways to do divination. Countless. There's looking at stones, looking at patterns in smoke, looking at the way the light reflects off of water. All sorts of things.
Crystal gazing, candle gazing,
fire gazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Mirror gazing.
Yep.
Which is essentially what crystal
Actually,
gazing
I think,
is.
Me and you did that once, Yara, a couple years back.
Yeah, possibly. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Carroll in MMM recommends a couple of different forms for beginners. I know he recommends things like I Ching, however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
He recommends that. He recommends tarot. He recommends, I believe, a pendulum and maybe stones. Yara, you being the level of divination that you're at,
yeah,
what would you recommend for people starting out getting into divination?
Yeah, how would you recommend it to me?
Stones.
Stones?
Stones are a dice. The stones that I've used before is you use it kind of like a magic 8-ball. You have a few stones, 4 to 8. I use 8 personally. Yeah. Each color representing a different thing, and they all have a very similar tactile feel. They're just different colored.
Yeah. And
so I keep them in a bag. I'll ask a question, shake it up, take one out. There's your answer.
Okay. So there's no way you could actually know beforehand.
Right.
That's the idea. And one thing because I've got a stone set as well, and I purposefully don't use it very often so that I'm not familiar, because I picked mine out at some metaphysical shop. Yeah. And it wasn't that like, oh, I got to get them from here, because it's just easier. It's easier than walking up and down the fucking riverbank looking for different rocks.
Yeah, and looking for different rocks along a riverbank that are all relatively small, that all feel the same, that are all different color. When you can just go to somewhere that has stones and you can look at all of them because they won't have fist-sized boulders.
But I went and got mine there, and I got 8 different stones, but some of them feel a little different. Some of them are a little bigger than others, and so I purposefully don't use that super often just so that I don't get really familiar with how they feel.
Yeah, so whenever you're doing the divination process, it's more randomized. Like, you don't know exactly what you're feeling or grabbing for.
Well, it's not so much that it's randomized, because it's always going to be randomized, but it's so that I can't juke the stat.
Fair enough. Yeah,
so
the system.
Right. So, like, if you're asking a question regarding something that's beneficial to you and you want a yes, you're not going to reach into the bag and feel the stone and, oh, yep, that's the yes.
Ooh, I got the blue rock. That means it is going to happen.
Or this, the rough one is the yes stone, right? One of the most genius divination tools I've ever seen is from somebody that I know in my life who does not do magic at all. And what he would do is flip a coin. And the reason he flipped the coin, because I asked him about it one day. It was always like, a question like, oh, where should we go to eat? Or what do you want to do? What movie should we watch? He'd just flip a coin. And I was like, why do you do that? Like, it's heads or tails, one or two answers. He's like, no, that's not what it's about. You assign something arbitrarily to each side, like heads for KFC, tails for McDonald's, or whatever, right? And you flip the coin, and then you read it. And if you feel a certain way, like if you, like, oh, I got KFC, fuck, I really wanted McDonald's, it means that it was a decision that mattered. And so you go with what, but if you just look, okay, well then it obviously didn't matter to me that much, so it doesn't matter where I go.
Right, and that's one thing you can settle arguments with and shit. Say, okay, well, the example he gave, what do you want to eat? And so we'll toss a coin. Most of the time, like, heads will go to the restaurant down the street. The minute that coin's in the air, most of the time you'll know what you want.
Yeah, lady on heads is like, tails is better. Let's go do tails.
For divination, for me, what I use most often is tarot. That's what I started with. I've developed a couple of different methods. I've got the stones. I've got a pendulum. I don't really use my pendulum, like, ever. The way I use my pendulum is if I lose something in my apartment, I have, like, a sketched out map of my apartment. And if I lose something...
And you use your pendulum, just, like, hover over the map, and it goes, okay. Interesting.
And it's not so much that it's like, oh, this will tell me magically where my thing is at, but that's kind of what it's doing.
In the kitchen.
But mostly it's like...
Right, and if you follow the psychological model, like I do most of the time, by swinging that pendulum, subconsciously, you might probably know where you left something.
Yeah. Or it'll at least give you an idea of where to start your search. Like, again, kind of going back to information model of, like, you're looking, it's swinging, like, oh yeah, I remember having this in my living room at some point in time.
Yeah.
And so you go there and, that it's just an idea to get you going, right?
And that's what reading tarot is. You draw out those cards and you see the pictures. You doing it for a long time and studying it and doing all of your research, you'll have a general idea of what each card means, or hell, you might even know the traditional meaning of all 78 cards. Well, but for the most part, like me, I just intuitively read them. Like, I'll flip a card over. That's what it looks like to me based on who I'm reading, what I'm reading it for. This is the image it's showing to me. That's the story it's telling.
I would say that, like, to compare myself and you, Yara, as far as reading tarot, because we both read tarot.
Okay.
And I would say that I'm okay at it. I'm decent at reading tarot, but it's come with a lot of practice and a lot of reading. And, like, I can look at a card and, like, okay, well, this card indicates this because of the symbolism that's on the card, and it might, point to an external source, or, a major arcana represents this or whatever. And I've done readings for Yara where I'll show him that, and he's like, where the fuck are you getting that from? I'm like, oh, I read this book. And he's like, I mean, I understand that. I understand where you're, like, how your read is reading out, but I never would have, like, I didn't have to read a book to do that. It just showed up to me. And I'm like, yeah, I had to practice a lot to get to being okay at reading. I also work with a couple of different decks, and that, like, familiarity with your deck is, I think, very important.
Now, quick question when it comes to divination tools. Yar, you recommended that stones were the easier one to start out. Tarot and pendulum required a little more skill?
It's not so much skill, because with tarot, you can, yes, just read what it's telling you. But again, it takes practice to be able to look at it and see, like, okay, well, this is kind of what it's telling me. But if you're using, say, the Rider-Waite tarot, and you see a guy standing on the side of his bed with like 9 swords hanging above him, okay, well, what does that mean in relation to my life at all? But the more you practice, the more you'll get familiar with how those pictures and how those cards can play into things, as opposed to drawing a stone out and, oh, that's a color. I know what that color means.
Yeah, and like my Hermetic deck, that's the one I started out with. I love that deck. It's a great fucking deck, by the way. That deck is daunting. It is overwhelming at first. First of all, there's 78 cards. Secondly, each one of those cards, especially in the Hermetic deck, has so fucking much information just on, there's so much on the card. If you look at a card, there's, a picture, and that picture, it has all of this crazy detail in it. But beyond that, there's a Hebrew symbol and an alchemical symbol, and there's all of this shit on there, and you're like, what the fuck am I looking at?
And depending upon which model you're approaching your magic from, you could see that as, well, this is what the universe is telling me. This is what each one of these things means in relation to my life. Or if you just see it as a way of reading it and being like, okay, well, I'm building a story based around this using my intuition, you still have a shitload of symbols in order to draw from.
Well, and yeah, that's the way to, ideally look at it. And that's how I kind of look at it now. But at first, it's just an overload. Yep. There's so much there, and it's a lot to learn. Now, the other deck that I've been working with is the Wild Unknown.
Which is beautiful.
It's an amazing deck. But by contrast, a Wild Unknown card has like nothing on it. There's not a lot of symbolism on those decks. They're aesthetically, they are fucking gorgeous. But when you're used to reading like a Rider-Waite or a Hermetic deck or the Thoth deck, you pop one of those cards over, and you're just looking at it, and you just have to draw from what's there.
To me, it's kind of the difference between these two decks is, say you're back in high school or college or wherever, and you're in a writing course. It's the difference between someone telling you, okay, this is the paper you're going to write. This is the plot that you need to follow. This is how you're going to end the story versus, all right, write me an argument paper.
So, like, I guess my biggest question is, Dreadnought, you've been mentioning these different decks. There are different tarot decks? I thought they were all just kind of the same.
Hundreds. There are hundreds of different tarot decks.
And you have the Hermetic?
There are different schools. It started out there were Hermetic decks and there were Rider-Waite decks.
What is Rider-Waite?
Rider-Waite tarot is like the
traditional
deck. When everybody thinks of tarot cards, they think of Rider-Waite. Hermetic decks, and it goes down to, you can go way, way back, and it's the split between, the OTO and blah, blah, there's a whole lot of history behind it. But basically, they're just two different people that designed two different decks. And most decks that you see are based either on Rider-Waite or on Thoth. But you also get some crazy decks out there. There are people out there, like the Wild Unknown is not based on either. It's its own thing entirely. There's also like the Santa Muerte deck. There's so many different cards out there, and there's a lot of belief in how someone should come about reading tarot. If you go by, what is it, Wicca?
Most Wiccan practitioners, or more like neo-cultists, I guess, kind of follow the belief that you can't read tarot unless a deck has been given to you or gifted to you.
Like, you shouldn't buy your own, in other words.
Okay.
There are also beliefs that you don't ever let anyone else touch your deck, because then you lose your link to it or whatever.
There's a lot of stuff like that, and it's however you choose to look at it. Like, I feel like a lot of that, and I don't want to say like, oh, this is bullshit, but it goes back to that kind of founding. One of my core beliefs of magic is that it's 90% aesthetic. How do you view it in a way that makes you feel cool? And so that'll make you want to keep doing it. And that's why, Yara has basically taught me a lot of what I know about magic, but our two practices are very different.
See, when I'm reading someone's tarot, like, I don't care if they touch it. In fact, I actually prefer if they do, because to me, when I'm reading their tarot, I have them cut the deck before I start reading it, because to me that puts their intent into the deck.
Yeah,
they're touching it. They're able to tap into what the deck is reading, as opposed to, no, you can't touch it at all, otherwise it will ruin it, and I will no longer have a magical link with my deck. No.
And to me, part of that is like, it's kind of like really gatekeepy.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No.
Like, you have to be given a deck, which means I hold the power to gift you this deck. Fuck you. Go out and buy a deck. You can get a Hermetic Tarot deck for like $10 on Amazon.
Yeah, and that's back to kind of your question earlier. Like, there are so many decks. Basically, at this point, you have the very basic tenets of what a deck is.
Yeah.
You have the major arcane and the minor arcana. The major arcana being the cards that people are familiar with when it comes to tarot, like Death or the Devil or the Tower or the Fool.
Fucking Tower.
You have all of those, but then you also have the minor arcana, which are like, it's Ace through King of Pentacles, Wands, Swords, Cups. And you have those. There are a couple other cards that are thrown in as opposed to a standard like poker deck. So instead of just Jack, Queen, King, you have Page, Knight, Queen, King.
Now in Wild Unknown, as a deck that's not based on thing, it's son, daughter, mother, father.
Yeah. But really, all the different tarot decks are just different artistic interpretations of the same 78 archetypes that have existed for hundreds of years.
Yeah. So the differences are purely aesthetic.
It's
they do all the same thing.
It's pick one that looks cool to you. Aesthetic.
Yep.
Pick the one that you like. When I bought my Hermetic deck, I bought it because I thought it looked cool. It was like, archaic and creepy looking, and it was also $15.
Was it on a budget?
I didn't want to spend. Well, I didn't want to spend because I was going to buy a Thoth deck.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to spend $35 on the deck and the book and then go buy another book for it, which I did later. I don't have a Thoth deck, but I have the book on it. But I was like, I don't want to spend $40 on something that might not even work for me.
Yeah.
There's a $15 option here that's going to do the same thing.
Right.
And so that's what I did. Real quickly, we talked about pendulums. We talked about stones. There are other methods. I've got a bone set, which was gifted to me by someone amazing, and I love it.
Is bone set like the rocks?
No.
They're actual bones.
Like
Well,
actual
yeah.
animal.
But like the same process.
No.
You just pick one out.
No.
You can.
Okay.
You can do that.
Optional.
The way I do mine is I cast mine.
Oh, okay. So you cast all the bones out.
I don't
and just read.
chuck them, but I cast them, and based on how they land, ideally in a circle. Like I'll have a casting circle, and then I throw, and then what lands in the circle versus what lands outside the circle, you read on that. But I also have different meanings assigned to bones, so that if I want to draw them, I can. Mostly I cast them, though. Because if I'm going to draw something, I'll draw stones. Just because I don't want to... I don't know, it's just weird. I don't have a bag big enough to put all those bones into. And they also feel... They feel very, very different.
Right.
So in a sense, divination, like you can use any mundane object, just
Absolutely.
as long as you can use it as rateable. Like
Encenomancy.
ugh.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely anything that you can, like I had said at the beginning, you're using it as a prompt in order to intuit how things are going to work. And that's one beautiful thing about it is you can use divination in order to craft rituals, in order to figure out what you're going to do next, because by using divination, you could figure out, well, the root cause of my I'm having a problem dealing with this person. Why am I having a problem dealing with this person? And you find out through divination that it could be because you tend to come across more harshly to that person than other people for some reason. Well, now you have something to work with.
Well, when I started out practicing with tarot, I did daily reads. And the question I would ask is, what do I need to know today? And that's telling you all sorts of different information. And I think that that's a great way to start. I would also highly recommend, and I still do this, it's one of the few journals that I actually keep up with regularly anymore, is keeping a divination journal.
Because you need to be able to determine, is what I drew factual?
Is how
did I interpret it correctly?
Yeah.
am I reading accurately? Things like that.
Because it's just like everything else we do. It's by having a set of controlled things, you can figure out, what do I need to focus on? How did I interpret this slightly incorrectly? How can I improve my accuracy? Okay, well, I was about like 60% accurate. How can I make it so that it's better? What did I miss on this card? What was it telling me that I missed out on?
Yeah, it's good to have all that information in front of you so you can actually like see it, read it, and then work with it.
And with as with anything in Magic, the biggest variable is self. You can do the steps of a ritual the same way 100 times, but you could be in 96 different moods when you do it.
Yeah, so I was about to bring that up. Like, if me and you, Dreadnought, did the same ritual, totally different results.
Well, not only that, I could do the same ritual twice with totally different results, because I could be pissed off when I do it one day, and I could be very serene when I do it the next day.
Which is why you need to keep a journal and write down all variables.
Exactly. And again, the biggest variable is self. You are the biggest variable in this experiment, period. I think that's a pretty good cover of divination. Do you have anything to add? Because you're definitely, like, when it comes to divination, like, Yara is, of the three of us, like, the go-to.
I don't think there's anything more to add apart from starting off, you'll want something simple. So, stones would be my best guess. Another one is just a die, a 6-sided die. You can cast that, have each number represent a different thing.
Yeah, like your Magic 8-Ball.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck, use an 8-ball. Use a Magic 8-ball.
I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't recommend Encenomancy.
Yeah, well,
we're going back to the well on that one too much. It's just, it's a dead. We're flossing a dead horse at this point.
We're just watching Biodome over and over again.
I guarantee we'll have an episode in the future that's just entirely dedicated to divination.
Exactly,
because it's so encompassing.
Absolutely. Side note, a little bit of integrated plugging here. If you go to the Faith Blind Council podcast Instagram at FBC Podcast, you can see an example of the Wild Unknown Tarot deck.
Shit,
it is fucking gorgeous. Highly recommend. We're going to do another quick break, and then we're going to get back and talk about some ritual craft.
Woo woo.
So we'll be back in just a few.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Welcome to Paradise. I know from personal experience that it can be really difficult to get the occult and ritual tools you need to continue or even begin your practice. Welcome to Paradise is an up-and-coming occult supply store that was created for magicians by magicians. Each and every item is either handcrafted or personally vetted by one of the practicing occultists that make up their team. Not only do they offer ritual and magical tools, Welcome to Paradise can also provide you with detailed tarot readings, occult-themed bone art, pendulums, one-of-a-kind rosaries, or even basic magical kits to help you on your journey through the great work. Welcome to Paradise is looking to build a community of magicians, whether veterans or novices, that seeks to help other practitioners hone their craft regardless of their path. So, if you're on the lookout for ritual materials from hoodoo to Wicca to Left Hand Path and more, or if you're an artist that's wanting an outlet for their occult or magical themed goods, be sure to check out WelcomeToTerradice.com.
Getting back to magical tools and different tools that are available to the magician.
Wizard!
The wizard. Wizard. Yes. .com. We talked a lot at length about divination. There are other, obviously, fucking other tools out there. Amulets, talismans,
Yeah.
things like that.
Magic wands.
Yeah. Wands, athames, cauldrons. Look at my altar. There's fucking candles and feathers and shit, statues,
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff.
bottles of booze.
And most of those tools basically boil down into something to channel your will through.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about maybe the difference between an amulet and a talisman and what each of those are for. Traditionally speaking, a talisman is usually a ward against something, whereas an amulet is for something. I might have those mixed up. I don't know. I've been drinking.
Yeah,
So-
though I kind of use the words interchangeably. Basically, I see it as something that has a magical purpose that you wear around your neck. Like, it could have a sigil on it, it could have words inscribed on it, it could be absolutely anything, but as long as it has a purpose.
Yeah, and it comes down to intent.
Yep.
Realistically.
And most of the items that you have, most of the magical tools that you'll have, like anything that I have up there, is all for the creation of the theatrics of magic.
Yeah, it's pageantry. I have a wand that I use pretty regularly, and most of the reason I use a wand is because psychologically, when I'm holding it, I know it's time for magic. You know, I don't need that wand to do magic.
Which is
Right.
nice to have.
No, absolutely. And it's something you can, like, the purpose of a wand in general is to focus your point on something. It's an extension of your arm. You have it, you hold it outward, and there is a point. Just like, it's an old school laser pointer.
Basically.
So you have it stretched out, you have a point that you can focus on in order to create things in the air and focus your concentration on them.
Your finger can do the job just as well.
Yep.
Finger
Woo! Half of what we do, like, as chaos magicians, one of the things that we'll do is we don't give a shit about substitutions at all. So, for, like Dreadnought had said, you can use your finger in place of a wand. In place of the silver chalice that I have up on my altar, I have a can of beer right here. We could just take drinks out of that.
Yeah. Or you can use, I bought these shot glasses that have little skulls on them.
That's pretty metal.
Yeah.
And you can use that in substitution of anything else.
Yeah. And it's again, it comes down to intent. And it comes down to a tool being a way to focus your intent.
Yeah,
And to focus
taking something that's mundane and putting intent towards it,
and
creating something magical.
and focusing that magical will, just in general, the same way that you use a divination set to channel your intuition. You have a different tool, and obviously, you hand somebody a hammer, and that's the only thing they have. After a while, everything's going to look like a nail. So
Right.
you have different tools for the task at hand. You have a wand versus an athame versus a fucking baseball bat.
What is an athame?
A ritual knife.
Okay.
Within the Gardenian Wiccan tradition and in the Key of Solomon and shit like that, you have two ritual knives. You have an athame, you have a bowline. Athame is a knife used for magical attacks, as opposed to a bowline, which is a curved knife that is used to gather herbs and whatever. The athame has a black handle, the bowline has a white handle. They're a pair, but You can use a machete as a bowline. It doesn't matter. You can use you can use a butter knife as an athame.
It's not going to work that well, but you can.
As long as you believe it does, it doesn't give a it doesn't matter. Well, unless you're talking about cutting herbs, then that's not going to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like using it as a bowline is not going to be great.
No,
of an idea. But you could use a hatchet.
Yeah, you can use a chainsaw for your athame.
That'd be dope as fuck.
That'd be pretty metal.
So I feel like that's a pretty good. And then, you get into, I believe there's a section in MMM where Carroll talks about magical weapons and distinctly from magical tools.
Well, he talks about using a magical weapon for the purpose of creating a banishing ritual.
Yeah. And in that regard, a magical weapon is something that you're using specifically with the intent of attacking or defending.
Yes.
It's a much more adversarial kind of interpretation.
Yeah. It quoted from the book. It's a magical weapon is a sword, dagger, wand, or perhaps a large ring. The instrument should be something which is impressive to the mind and should represent the aspirations of the magician. So, something that represents your intent. If you, for a magical weapon, if you want a big fuck-off stick and you want people to go the hell away, then you grab a big fuck-off stick. Yeah, like a baseball bat.
A shillelagh.
Yeah, something that represents your intent. Because if your intent is something like that you want to attack someone and you hate them and you're angry with them, you wouldn't use a feather duster.
You'd use the mace.
Right. It's something to represent that intent to you. Because the more representative it is in your mind, the more power it's going to have.
And the more power you can use with it, I'm assuming as well.
Yeah. Exactly. The more you're going to be able to channel into it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that is distinct in your mind. As this is something that is for magic.
Because, I mean, if you happen to use a feather duster, there could always be something in your mind is like, well, this is made of feathers. It's not going to inflict my hatred, anger nearly as much as I would like, so it's not going to be nearly as effective. Blah, blah.
Well, it's also something that's useful in a mundane sense of like, well, let me grab my magical weapon because there's a lot of dust on my television set.
Yeah.
And like it's going to muddy that water.
Yeah.
As opposed to a baseball bat with spikes. Like, that'll get shit done.
There's dust on my TV. It's time for a new TV.
Yes.
So that works. I mean, for me, for my magical weapon, I want a flamethrower.
I mean,
That's
that
a good one.
Like a big one. Not like, oh, I need to get rid of this hornet's nest. I want like one of those World War II backpack ones.
Yeah. I really want to get rid of my problem. And all of the structural damage behind it. I'm tired of this whole tenancy thing. Wherever the
having
fuck they
neighbors,
live.
you know.
I hate all of my neighbors. I want them all gone.
Psychological model.
Yeah. Just burn down the fucking apartment building.
Isolate that. Isolate that fucking audio. Done. So that's, tools versus weapons. It's just, it's a way of you being able to channel stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why, going back to when we were talking about divination sets earlier, magical tools are not needed in my mind, but they make shit a lot easier.
Right, and it's the same with the whole substitution thing too. You can use a can or a cup as opposed to a chalice, but sitting here, you see that there's a lot of shit that I have just sitting around that looks magical or whatever. I didn't buy it all at once. No, I gathered it over years and it's like, okay, well that's interesting. I can use that somehow.
I can make it magical.
Yeah. I'm going to figure out something I can do with this.
Yeah. Like thrift stores are going to be your friend. You can find all sorts of crazy shit there.
Thrift stores, going to fucking gatherings, meeting with other people. Sometimes shit'll happen and you'll wind up with something and it's, okay, well, I can use this somehow.
Yeah, or like a flea market.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But talking about the tools, I think we should, probably wrap this up with the spellcraft.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're going to really get into more practical application. Spellcraft, ritual craft, the idea of building a ritual. You can, obviously there are established rituals out there, Lesser Banishing of the Pentagram, Star Ruby, all the way up to the sacred work of a Bremelin the Mage. Like, it's all there. There's crazy amounts. But I've found, especially in chaos magic, most rituals are crafted by the practitioner for a specific purpose. And most of them are crafted with varying degrees of preparation, but for one specific intent. And usually, like, you can iterate on these rituals, but generally, rituals are a thing that are done as kind of like I don't want to say the nuclear option. It's a thing you go to when a sigil's not going to do the trick for you.
Right. How I see using a ritual and the purpose of using it is you have sigils and the basic practices with meditation and shit like that. The reason you would want to do a ritual is because you want more oomph behind it, behind what you're working with. And the reason you do it is because, as I had mentioned before, the whole theatrics of magic. By performing these theatrics, you're kind of blending your reality with what's magical, because you don't perform rituals every day. And so by doing the ritual, you're taking something and completely tearing it out of reality. You're stepping outside of reality and putting more intent behind it. It is very much like theater. Theater entertains. Theater has a meaning. It has a purpose. And you're doing that with a ritual.
It kind of sounds like gnosis, ritual gnosis, in a sense. Like, performing all of these steps through the ritual enters a gnosis state where you can perform the magic?
Sort of. With a ritual, gnosis is very much implied and utilized, and with each ritual, a different kind of gnosis is utilized. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say that the ritual itself is gnosis.
Yeah. Just reaching the gnosis through ritual.
Gnosis is a tool, ritual is the job.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so using...
that's a perfect way.
Using the tool with the job.
Yes. So a very basic outline of a ritual is you have the statement of intent, or you have a banishing at the beginning in order to focus yourself. You ground yourself. A statement of intent so that way you focus your mind on what you're about to do. You've got a very simple practice of gnosis, so you could incorporate dancing or drumming or a mantra or something like that. Something that makes you achieve gnosis in a theatrical way. So this could be utilizing things such as the magical weapon, dressing in a certain way, doing it at a certain time. It's utilizing these different props in order to achieve this goal.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes into kind of... So in the notes that I have here, I've kind of broken down the 3 parts of ritual craft. And the first one you have are components. And with those components, you have physical components and metaphysical components. Physical components would be things like costumes, would be things like
your weapon.
I need this ritual for invoking a goetic entity means we're going to use cedar incense.
Yes, I have a triangle on the ground for the invocation.
Yeah, or
good to know.
A ritual circle or a casting circle or whatever, right? That's a physical component. And then you have metaphysical components, and that's the closest thing that I would put gnosis into. Mm-hmm. A metaphysical component is something that's not tangible, but it's something that you need, right? Like, you need the invocant to invoke. That's a metaphysical component of the ritual.
You have the different form of gnosis that the people are going to participate in. You have the stated intent of everyone there. It is these things that aren't tangible that are part of the ritual.
And then you get into like symbolism, things that are put into the ritual specifically to create that atmosphere that you are trying to attain. As far
Would
as
symbolism be metaphysical, or is that an entirely different
It's
thing?
kind of both, where something physical is representative of something metaphysical. So you would have, say, for the Goetic invocation, you have the invocation circle on the ground, and you have the Tetragrammaton written along the outside of it. Well, what's the symbolism of the Tetragrammaton? Why do you have that? Well, there's a symbolic reason for having that. What's that reason? Well, it's used as a symbol of binding for a Goetic demon. It's that symbolism that makes it that much more real to you.
Yeah, it's a way to veil the fact that you're dressed up in a, hokey looking black robe and chanting nonsense.
You say it's hokey, but I spent good money on that shit.
I mean, I spent good money on my fucking
Shorts?
rollout keyboard, but it's still hokey.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's
Yeah.
and it's layers, and it's veiling things from your conscious mind. And then aside from that, a separate thing is the theatricality of it all. And that theatricality, that pageantry, is going in and using a magic-y sounding voice to read stuff, or reading something in Latin. Even if you don't necessarily read Latin, you just kind of sit there and sound it out to the best of your ability. It doesn't matter if you're getting all of that right. The point is you're hiding it from your conscious mind. You're dressing it up.
And it's like we had talked about in the last episode, how strengthening your belief, and the more you believe something, the more powerful it's going to be, the more effective it's going to be. By doing all of these theatrics, by reading this fucking ancient dead language, you're going to make it mean that much more to your consciousness, because you're standing there in your fucking black robes like a real cultist, and you're chanting in a dead language while you hold this silver chalice above your head. That's fucking metal as shit.
Yeah,
and that's going to seem so much more effective to you.
Yeah, you've got somebody laying on an altar somewhere. You're not going to fucking stab them, but it creates this imagery in your mind.
And then I stab them.
Yeah,
then you're a murderer, and
but it's
Only if they die.
True.
Otherwise, you're just a failed murderer.
I'd rather be a real murderer.
Like your optimism. But there's a difference between doing all of that and then just sitting in your library reading, like, fucking lorem ipsum.
Yeah, that's boring.
Yeah.
Only if I'm dressed as a cultist would it be cool.
Right.
And even then,
really,
Going to your local library just a cultist might not be a good idea.
yeah, it's just
it depends on who you want to meet.
yeah,
Fair
really.
point. There's some pretty cool librarians out there.
And so that's why a lot of the theatrics behind ritual exist, is to strengthen that belief in the practitioner, which will make it more effective.
Oh, yeah.
And I
it
think
makes
that-
it that much more powerful.
And I think that's something that's kind of an argument of semantics, where you would say it strengthens the belief. I would say it veils the inherent silliness. It veils this idea of, like, we're all just here, like, just dancing around like idiots in these robes and shouting nonsense at each other, and then we're going to play Red Rover. Like, you're veiling that with this theatricality of ritual.
Whatever. The ritual itself can be ridiculous as fuck.
Yeah, and it can be, and oftentimes it is. A lot of times when people hear the word ritual, they think, like, oh, it's this big, spooky, whoa!
You're out
Like,
in the middle of the woods reading the Necronomicon.
like, no, most of the rituals that I've partaken in, and I feel like you would probably agree with me on this, most of the rituals that people do are inherently silly.
Oh, yeah, they're dumb as shit.
Like, it's goofy shit of, like, we're playing Duck, Duck, Goose, basically.
Yeah.
Or we're all sitting around and taking turns drinking this absinthe and then, like, going glissalic.
Yeah.
Like, that's dumb. But if you dress it up with some pageantry, then suddenly it's not dumb. It's fucking cool.
Yeah, there's reason behind it. You give it reason. You give it meaning.
Yeah, it's fucking metal as fuck, Like, that's what you're doing. And I think that's kind of, it's a semantic argument, but semantics are important.
Yeah.
And that's, kind of the basics of ritual craft. And we went over it a little more in depth in our last episode with the actual steps of a ritual.
Yeah.
But crafting it, the idea is to have your intent. That's the most important thing in any ritual, really any act of magic.
I mean, you have all of these tools. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you even doing it? You have to have an intent behind it. It's like having a toolbox. It's like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? You can throw it against a wall. Cool. What are you going to accomplish out of that?
So I have the shovel. My intent is to dig a hole. But instead, I'm just going to swipe it at my shed.
Yeah, exactly. You have all of these tools. Why are you doing it? That's your intent. You need to let it be known to yourself why you're doing something.
Exactly. And that's the whole point of doing it. Because if you're just... there's something to be said about doing a ritual just for the sake of doing a ritual.
Tantra.
You're not wrong, dude. There's something
on this episode of Yara Tips.
There's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
I was trying to find my beer that's not empty. Starting out, like, as a neophyte or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
What?
Like, starting out as...
Newbie.
Yeah, starting out as a nub.
The fancy way of saying nub.
Yeah.
Before you get to being a magical neckbeard. Like...
It covers my whole face, you bitch.
Dear listeners, Yara's beard is fantastic.
But the idea is you're not going to be at a point where you're just doing ritual just to do a ritual. Mm-hmm. No matter how much you're trying to stave off that lust for result, it's going to be there because you're 99% of occultists started out reaching out to a form of magic or chaos magic or whatever the fuck you reached out to because there was something in your life that you were missing or something that you wanted to accomplish. People didn't just do it just to do it. So having that intent is important. And being able to clearly state that intent is even more important.
Well, even more important with the theatrics of clearly seeing yourself doing it as well helps the intent further along.
Yeah. And so I would say those are kind of like the main points of crafting a ritual. You have your intent, how you intend to dress it up, and that's going to inform your components. That's going to inform the things you need for it.
Right.
And then you have all of that, and then you craft it together in a way that has much like a story, you have a specific beginning and a specific end point.
Right.
And that gets into banishing as a ritual, which I would say is probably the most important ritual to have in your bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
Banishing ritual?
Yes.
Yeah, so that you can clear everything out.
Okay, so like when we talked about first episode, just like banishing the room.
Yep.
Well, there's also banishing after a ritual.
After a ritual?
Yeah.
The most common
banishing, grounding thing.
Yeah. Start and finish.
Yeah,
Yep.
The most common one is banishing with laughter. And we actually kind of glossed over the idea of duality.
Yeah.
Which we can get to at some point.
Time.
But the reason you'd banish with laughter is because laughter doesn't really have an opposite. Whereas with joy, the opposite of joy is grief. And the idea of duality is that you can't have joy without grief. You can't have success without failure.
Right. And
they exist because of each
then
other.
Would laughter be its duality be depression, grief?
No, because as Carroll explains it, the opposite of laughter is laughter, because with laughter is simply a differently evolved form of everything else. So crying is like laughter, except there are tears coming out of your face.
Now, when you say laughter, like
laughter, start fucking laughing,
like capital
bitch.
L, lower L.
Doesn't
laughter,
matter.
Laugh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that. Just
that's pretty
fucking
simple.
laugh.
That might be the simplest part of this podcast so far.
I mean, you look at, to kind of go off on a tangent here, Andy Kaufman invented the idea of uncomfortable laughter in modern American comedy. Nobody laughed at Andy Kaufman, especially starting out. Nobody laughed at Andy Kaufman because he's funny. People laughed at Andy Kaufman because it's fucking weird.
Right, and that's
that
one...
nervous, uncomfortable laughter.
People laugh because they're nervous. People laugh because they're trying to fill up space. People can laugh when they're sad, when they're angry. That there is no opposite to laughter.
That's why laughter is the most commonly utilized banishing after a ritual, because it has no polar opposite.
Yeah,
other than itself.
I'm just sitting here thinking like laughter is like the reason you use it after banishing is, oh, it's a happy feeling, ha ha ha, you feel good about it, it's great.
Kind of is too.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But it's also because there's no like inherent duality to just fall back into. If you're, banishing with crying, first of all, it's kind of hard to make yourself cry. Unless
I don't know about that. All I gotta do is think about the Seer's End in Game of Thrones.
And there it is.
Jesus Christ!
And now
you made us those guys.
Now we've got it in there. There's the recap. Fuck. Anyways, banishing ritual. Crafting a banishing ritual is covered in MMM. Carroll suggests some basics for crafting one's own banishing ritual, which are, there's like kind of a minimum thing that he discusses as far as crafting one.
First, the magician describes a barrier about himself with the magical weapon. The barrier is also strongly visualized. The magician focuses his will on a visualized image, for example, the image of a magical weapon, or his own imaginary third eye, or a ball of light inside his own head. A sound concentration may additionally be or alternatively used. Third, the barrier is reinforced with power symbols drawn with the magical weapon. The traditional 5-pointed star or pentagram can be used, or the 8-pointed star of chaos, or any other form. Words of power may also be used. And then finally, the magician aspires to the infinite void by a brief but determined effort to stop thinking.
Carroll sounds like he's high.
I'm not gonna say you're wrong, so...
I might be wrong.
But that's the basic idea of crafting a banishing. And if you look at pretty much any established banishing ritual, it contains those elements. Yeah. Like the lesser banishing of the pentagram has all of those elements. You ascribe an area around yourself. You speak the words of power. You draw the pentagrams out in each cardinal direction. You speak more words of power, and boom. That's the banishing. The Star Ruby is a much more complicated version of that, but it's essentially the same.
What is the Star Ruby?
It's a very long, intricate banishing ritual designed by Crowley. That's a more intricate version of the lesser banishing of the pentagram.
If you're really interested in the Star Ruby, he describes it in the Book of Lies. I forget which chapter, but it's in there. It's a much more involved version.
Especially if you like theatrics, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good banishing, but it's a lot more to remember. You can memorize the lesser banishing of the pentagram in probably 10-15 minutes.
Yeah,
do
but
it
then
a couple of times,
with
and then
Star Ruby, then you have a soliloquy that's in Greek. So
there's a lot to it. There's also like the greater, or like the full pentagram banishing, which is like a much more involved. Like there's all of that, but then you have the simplest banishing, which doesn't really involve any of that, which is EAO.
Yeah,
and then you have personal banishings, which I have a personal banishing ritual, which is just going into Glossalia for a little bit and then yelling "Roll Tide."
Yep, he's a big fan of Alabama.
Well, it's not even that. It's just because it's such a goofy ass statement, right?
Yeah, just like the state.
Like you say, I don't want to disparage anybody who might be listening to this show from Alabama.
Sorry, Dustin.
Anyways, the idea is it's such a silly, goofy meme, right? That like it's going to make me laugh.
I think it's pronounced May.
Get the fuck out.
And that's this episode, so I'm getting kicked out of the podcast.
First of all, you're making us the Game of Thrones guys.
We didn't have to be.
Secondly, yeah, we did, because you said something.
We didn't have to be about it.
You piece of shit. And secondly, We're the fucking May guys. You're gonna tell me it's Jif next? Okay, Jod. Anyways,
we're not that bad.
Thanks, Mr. Peanut Butter.
Anyways,
Okay.
but the idea is that it's pretty much going to make me laugh.
Yeah.
Most times I hear it. And that laughter being something that has no polar opposite aside from itself is something that's going to banish. But it's that simple, right?
Yeah, and we'll go more into depth about the whole concept of duality and shit like that, because we'll probably in the future talk about the Kabbalion and all that noise.
I'm sure that'll be
Can't wait to learn about it.
That'll be in episodes down the line. But yeah, I think that's pretty much a good covering. What can you do today? I was going to tell you to come up with a banishing ritual, but you've already done that.
Get some stones.
Yeah, I would say come up with a method of divination. Start practicing divination. Like, keep a divination journal. Bring that in for next episode. And we can go over your methods. We don't have to go over specific things that you've used it for, but just like your method in general. We can talk about that.
And then keeping a divination journal and doing that every day. And it can be any question, anything at all.
Absolutely.
Just doing that. Keep record of your efficacy.
And even further expand
Good
on
word,
that.
by the way.
Yeah, that was a fancy $5 one.
Thanks.
Yeah, expanding on that, should I just use stones?
You don't have
I
to.
would use tarot, pendulum.
You can.
And for listeners,
Figure-
Yara gave me a pendulum and tarot deck for my own use, which thank you so much for that.
No worries.
That could be used for that as well.
Yeah.
So next week I can come back and I use tarot like this, I use my pendulum like this, I use my stones like this, and keeping a journal for all of it.
Yeah, you can do that and figure out which one works best for you, which
Yeah.
one you're more attuned to, which one you're more comfortable with, which
Yeah.
one gives you the best results.
So I think me feeling comfortable with whichever tool I'm using is going to be the one I'm aiming for the most.
I would also, in addition to the divination method, my challenge would be meditate every day.
At least 2 minutes.
However,
Realistic goals.
whatever it is you want to do, but keep a journal of that.
Yeah.
Keep a journal of your daily meditation, and we can go over that in the next episode. That would be my challenge. Meditate every day. Doesn't have to be for fucking 45 minutes
Yeah,
or
just
whatever.
meditate for as long as I can, hold
Yeah.
it, and
And-
then whenever it's over, just write it down.
Record your results.
And the same with the divination tools for Yara, just how I divine things. Oh, my questions are going to be bad. Like, how could they have made Biodome better?
They couldn't
Also,
have. That's the
They
answer.
couldn't have. Thank you to our good hosts.
That's the answer. You
Fucking
could,
perfect.
yeah,
Biodome
it's
is
the
perfect
perfect
film.
movie.
If you haven't seen Biodome,
My only gripe with the movie Biodome
Is that it wasn't Encino
is that
Man.
Exactly. is that
Both
the
of you
name
piece of shit.
the name doesn't have man in it, so we're stuck with Encinomancy. We don't have Biodomancy. Biodomancy.
There it is, Biodomancy.
Nailed it.
Okay,
All right.
I'll take it.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Faith Blind Council. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Don't forget to check us out on. We have Facebook now. We have Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram at FBC Podcast. We're on Twitter at FBC Podcast 1, the number 1.
You can also check out me on Twitter. I'm at Yaramarud, which is YARAMARUD.
That's so much letters.
Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
no.
Why do you put that many letters in a thing?
Because they're called words, you jackass.
Why?
Words are gum. Yeah, I can't.
Word-
speak
words
Words are daggone it.
Daggum
words.
Daggum it. Them daggum words, I can't really do it. You can also find, I'm on Twitter at Dr. Laserbomb. That's DR_Laserbomb. I do a lot of other stuff on there. It's mostly me tweeting about things that should probably get me banned from Twitter, but whatever.
Yeah, it's only a matter of
It is
time.
what it is.
And along with this, we talked about it. I'm going to go ahead and pop on Twitter just so you can reach out to me about any of the new questions. As someone who is learning this, I want to be more part of the social part of this whole podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and make a Twitter for anyone who's interested. And
I feel like
talking
you
to the
should.
guy who's interested.
I feel
in
like you
learning
should
this.
document your whole stuff on Twitter.
Yeah, that'd actually be a lot easier.
But I mean, like,
journals.
still keep a journal just because the act of writing stuff
I'll
out
keep my
is
journals, but like,
super fun.
yeah, if you guys are prominent on social media, I should probably do it too.
I don't know
considering
if
the
prominent
need.
is the right word.
No,
at all.
You guys
I
use the
post
internet.
random shit like
Exist.
yeah.
Since you guys exist on there.
But yeah, go ahead, shoot us emails, whatever.
Also,
tweets.
uh,
Let us know your questions or your comments. Tell us how everything we said was wrong.
yeah, Tantra.
Tell us how you thought Biodome was. I'd like to know your.
I don't want to hear about it unless
Jesus,
you say it's
no,
the best
I'm gonna
movie.
strangle you in your sleep.
Anyways, also big ups to our sponsors. Welcome to Tarot Dice. You know, all the other ones that we had.
Yeah, all the other ones.
Yeah,
Like Welcome to Paradise and Pauly Shore.
yeah.
No, I don't want to put Pauly Shore's name on this.
Thank God.
I feel like he's going to get real mad when we did that.
Or he'll just join.
He's going to hear, it's going to be like Luke Perry just reading all the high school fucking newspapers to see if he's mentioned.
Oh,
I'm so
no.
wet right now.
But we are also going to be at fucking Babylon Rising
Yep.
coming up in a couple of
Yeah.
weeks here.
Mm-hmm. It's in Springville or Springfield.
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Springville, then.
Springfield.
Springvale, Alaska.
Indiana. It's in southern Indiana.
Yeah,
It's down by Bloomington.
we're gonna be there. Tickets are $93
Right now, it's 111 at the door, from what I remember.
for all week.
Yeah,
That's going on. It's going on what? Like it's a
yeah.
Wednesday
Otherwise, from what I remember, it's $40 a day.
yeah. It's but it's like a what Wednesday to Sunday kind of thing.
All of the rituals and everything take place Thursday through Saturday. Everyone leaves on Sunday. Wednesday's more of a setting up thing,
Yeah,
but you can show up whenever the hell you feel
showing
like.
up on Sunday.
Wednesday's a setup day. Sunday's a go home day.
Yeah,
And it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a lot of cool shit going on.
And I'll be there.
yeah.
But also there will be cool shit too. So
That's the important thing to take away from this.
Yeah, not someone who's fucking talking about Biodome.
he's gonna be like,
It's
"No, you
better
guys
than
got it.
Encino.
You don't understand.
You
It's
guys don't understand.
biodomancy."
The corn chip scene was pivotal.
You know what? I'm gonna challenge you to this instead.
No, Jesus, no.
Please.
Kill me.
1 month of biodomancy.
I'll get it
And
started.
you proved to me that it's superior to Encinomancy because you can't do it.
On episode 1 of Biomancy.
Can't even get it right in the name.
My cult, my rules.
Son of a bitch.
We're
All
not
right.
even using Biodome.
We're going to get the fuck out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back next month with a brand new episode. And until then, fucking, I don't know.
Do
Keep
magic.
it magical.
No, we're not doing the key. That's so stupid.
No,
It's
that's
the
why I
dumbest
said it.
thing.
Fucking do magic. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
All right.
Except not Nike.
Yeah. We are looking
Do
for those
Only
sponsors,
Puma.
Just
by the way.
do
All right,
magic.
we're out of here. Bye.
Later.